Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Poza from the Pennsylvania Key is the host of the program and is with us throughout the series. And John, I guess today we have two folks on the line, right?
We definitely do. From Harrisburg, we have Becky Mercatoris, who is the Bureau Director of Early Learning Services at OCDEL, and we have Terry Shaner-Wade, who is the Bureau Director of Subsidized Child Care Services, also at OCDEL. Welcome to the program, Becky and Terry.
Hello. Thank you.
Good to have you on. And, you know, for those folks who are listening and may not be really as familiar with what your roles and responsibilities are at OCDEL, I kind of wanted to have both of you share, what your responsibilities are. So Becky, let's start with you as the Director of Early Learning Services. What are some of your responsibilities that you oversee?
Thank you so much for having me today, John. We are excited to be here.
Thank you.
My role as the Director of the Bureau of Early Learning Services is to oversee both the Keystone STARS Quality Rating and Improvement System for Pennsylvania, and we also work to support our pre-K counts and Head Start State Supplemental grantees who are implementing our state pre-K program.
Very good. And Terry, how about you?
Okay, and again, thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
So in my role as Director of Bureau of Subsidized Child Care Services, my group has oversight of the Subsidized Child Care Program in Pennsylvania, publicly known as Child Care Works. Through that program, we serve the needs of over 119,000 children on a daily basis who are from low-income working families and help pay for their child care so that mom and dad can go to work and school. And it's a multi-million-dollar program that we manage. We manage it very well. We would like to think we, as I said, serve many, many children and the needs of many families in Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, let's go back to Becky. And Becky, I know one of the major projects that took place, actually going back a couple of years, was the whole STARS revisioning pilot study that was done. And that was done through the William Penn Foundation and the University of Pennsylvania. We had the results, and now we were at the point of the work that study showed. We're going into a full implementation regarding changes in the STARS program. So I know this year that we just started, we're in a kind of a hold harmless year before it fully goes into effect next fiscal year. But can you kind of like touch on what the study results showed and some of the changes that are going to be taking place in the STARS program?
Sure. So as you mentioned, the STARS revisioning process was really kicked off by a study generously funded by the William Penn Foundation through the University of Pennsylvania, where they took a good look at the previous Keystone STARS program and spent some time thinking about what was working well and where there might be some areas for improvement. And a couple of big pieces came out of that inquiry. We understood that what we really needed to do was move to a place where we were really using evidence-based performance standards to support programs and serving children and thinking about what they might want to change or shape or grow in their own program. We also understood that our STARS levels needed to have a very clear progression to them. So in the previous system, some folks found that there were large jumps between levels and then much smaller incremental steps between others. And it was important to all of us that we were able to really level that out so there was a very clear and logical progression of the STAR levels. And finally, we did understand that the resources that were available through the STAR system really needed to be prioritized to the programs that were serving Pennsylvania's most vulnerable children, as Terry discussed through our Child Care Works program. So the inquiry really set us on a path to start to think about, again, what was working well in STARS and places that we wanted to make some improvements. The STARS revisioning process really began in earnest in February 2016 when we brought a group of our STARS think tank members together who were folks from across the early learning field and who sat down and said, again, hey, what's working well here? What do we want to keep? And then thinking about what are places that we have some opportunities to make some improvements. So the STARS revisioning process really worked through looking at all of the previous performance standards, understanding what still belongs in the new system, what performance standards we could trim away, and then what were areas that we did want to bring to the forefront that maybe weren't represented before. So as you mentioned, John, this year is a hold harmless year for our early learning providers. We want to ensure that programs really have time to examine the new standards, think about how they would work in the context of their program, have a lot of support to think about their own transition needs, and really be in a place where they're comfortable with the new system before they're being asked to be designated under the new performance standards.
I wonder if we could back up a little bit for the benefit of parents listening who may not really understand what the STARS program is about, what the rating system is about. Maybe you can tell them why the STARS rating system is important to them, and along with that, how they can check on a potential provider using the system. This, of course, as we get into a new fall season, this might be something that they're considering as they shop around for a provider.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So Keystone STARS is what we call a quality rating and improvement system in the early care and education field. And the idea behind all of the quality rating and improvement systems across the United States is that all early learning providers have an opportunity to have a framework for thinking about how to better their program and what types of practices they really want to invest their time to support the children and families that they serve. Keystone STARS is a way that families or folks making choices around child care can look across a wide variety of programs and understand that there are basic elements of quality in place, and then they are able to look and see what type of program might be a good fit for them. So Keystone STARS is not about making every program exactly the same. We want programs to have flexibility and be able to have their own special formatting or curriculum or program that they really want to focus on. But when you see those stars, you know that the basic elements are in place that allow programs to focus on their best practice.
Yeah.
Families are able to find child care programs through the findchildcare.gov website, and the STARS ratings are very public on all of our information. And then, Terry, did you want to discuss how they can contact the Child Care Information Services?
Certainly. Thank you, Becky. So right now, families in the community can contact their local Child Care Information Services office, also known as the CCIS. The CCIS can help that family use the Compass website to locate child care that meets their needs. The CCIS can also share information with that family about that facility's health and safety record, what their STARS rating is, and maybe what other services they might offer as a child care program. The CCIS also helps families who need help with paying for child care get that help if they qualify. Low-income working families can apply for help with paying for child care if they have a need for care based on working or going to school, and if their income is below 200% of the federal poverty income guideline, they may qualify for help with paying for child care so they can remain in employment and training. CCIS is that hub in the community right now for access to the Child Care Works program and the resource and referral services, not only to child care options, but to an array of early learning options and other resources in the community.
Now, Terry, you mentioned being below a certain level of the poverty line to qualify for the Child Care Works subsidy. Could you basically let our listeners know what that level actually is?
Certainly. So usually the figure we quote is for a family of four, which under 2017 levels and the federal poverty income guidelines, just to clarify, are established by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. For a family of four, that equates to roughly $48,000 per year in income. And again, depending upon the family size, a smaller family size or larger family size, that annual income figure will follow the family size with growing increments depending upon the size of the family. Once a family qualifies for our program, coming in under that threshold, we don't want to disrupt their service if possible. So what we do is we allow a family to remain in our program if their income stays below 235% of the federal poverty income guideline. And I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to quote a figure for that, but
right.
We do try to establish that bracket, if you will, so families once in can enjoy some consistency and reliance upon getting the help with paying for child care.
Once they determine that they do qualify, what steps do they have to take to actually get enrolled and get the subsidy?
So they actually need to select an eligible provider. An eligible provider would be a program such as a child care center or a group or family child care home that has been licensed by the Department of Human Services. OCDEL actually houses that group. The Bureau of Certification Services is our companion bureau that licenses child care facilities. A family may also choose to select a relative, perhaps, to help watch their children while they are working or going to school. So parents do have a choice. They must select an eligible provider within a certain number of days and work with the CCIS to have their child enrolled at that program so services can begin and CCIS will pay the selected provider on behalf of the family.
Very good. Thanks, Terry. I want to switch back to Becky for a second to talk about the STARS revisioning. Of course, we're in a time now where we're implementing all certified child care providers to actually be Star 1. So that was something that was never done in the past. In other words, it was a voluntary program. There was an option for those who were certified to participate in the STARS program. Now, all certified child care providers through the Department of Human Services will automatically become Star 1. How is that process going so far, Becky?
So we are very, very excited to welcome all of our brand new Star 1s to the Keystone Star system. We wanted to ensure that all child care providers have what they need to build their quality. And we wanted to recognize everyone who works very hard to meet all of the health and safety regulations every day and acknowledge them with the Star 1 certificate. This change was effective August 1st. And we have successfully welcomed everyone in. Providers are indeed receiving their welcome packets and their certificates now and starting to make connections with their local regional key offices to get connected with their quality coaches and start to understand more of the supports that are offered to them through the Keystone Star system.
Right. Now, what's the relationship? And Becky, you could either comment or Terry, you. These providers now who are automatically becoming Star 1, what's their relationship in terms of their being qualifying to provide the subsidy or to participate in the subsidy program?
I'll start, Becky, and if you'd like to chime in. It actually falls into the category of what I referred to earlier. We would consider this to be an eligible provider
right.
To serve children in the subsidy program. And the fact that the Star 1, or I should say rather the acquisition of a certificate of compliance as a regulated or licensed child care facility now being equal to having a Star 1 level further reinforces that. We want to get to a place where all of our children, we consider our children in the subsidy program to be among our most vulnerable in the state, and we want them to be in quality settings. So, in companionship with the STARS revisioning, one of the drivers of that, as you heard Becky say, was clearly to make sure that our most vulnerable children for whom we are supporting their child care needs, that we have them in the highest quality settings possible. And the move to equate acquiring a certificate of compliance to a Star 1 is a big step in that direction.
Absolutely. Now, Terry, I know not too long ago, we finally, after many, many years, have a new federal child care development block grant. And each state has its take on how it adapts to the new regulations. So what are some of the changes now in Pennsylvania that have taken place under the new block grant to ensure regulations are being met?
Certainly. So the Child Care and Development Block Grant was reauthorized in 2014 for the first time in almost 20 years. That was long overdue.
Right, definitely.
At its most basic level, the reauthorization of the block grant did a couple of key things. It significantly raised the bar for health and safety standards in child care settings. It also took on the concept of, whereas subsidy dollars have always been considered to be a work support for low-income working families, with the reauthorization of the block grant, the new concept and theme, if you will, was also that it was to serve the purpose of a child development support, so that while we're helping mom and dad remain employed and going to school, we can provide a more stable, seamless experience for the child. So part of that was to lengthen the time that we would authorize a child for. Previously, Pennsylvania, once a family was determined eligible, afforded that family 6 months of eligibility. Under block grant requirements, that changed, and we now offer a family, once determined eligible, 12 months, a full year of eligibility and benefits, and we would only reevaluate their eligibility for continued child care at the point they would be due for review. The other thing with regard to the health and safety pieces, Pennsylvania was already in a very good starting place for some of the requirements imposed by the block grant reauthorization, but the heightened health and safety requirements do necessitate some improvements and changes to our health and safety regulations as well. And we do have some regulatory amendments planned to incorporate the changes, particularly in the areas of criminal background checks for persons that work in child care settings, and also the training around health and safety topics that are required for individuals in those settings. So our amendments will be addressing those.
You both have mentioned health and safety regulations and standards. You just mentioned one of the factors would be background. What are some of the other regulations, standards that parents can be assured that their kids are in good care in terms of health and safety regulations?
So some of the other factors have to do with the credentials and the qualifications of the staff that are caring for their children in those care settings. I think that's a large part of what the STARS revisioning tries to get at, as far as making sure that we have qualified staff in place, not only from a health and safety perspective, but a quality perspective, so that the child can enjoy the highest level of quality care. The other pieces around it are pertaining to the block grant. There is a lot of emphasis on consumer education for families. It is one thing to provide safe, secure settings for children in care and to try to afford access to quality settings. But I think this goes to a comment made earlier. It's important that the state take responsibility to educate families on what it means for your child to be in a Keystone STARS facility and what it could mean for their child in their early development years as far as school readiness and so forth. So consumer education plays a very large part, a big chunk of the block grant reauthorization that states are obligated to meet.
Absolutely. I'm going to switch back to Becky, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you guys about the budget. Of course, the budget that passed, which was overall, in terms of early learning, there are several areas where we have seen increases in the budget. Of course, this was approved, and a lot of what the governor had proposed was also accepted, but we're still working on the revenue piece. So can you kind of comment on where we are in terms of the funding for this year and where it starts getting a little bit dicey as to whether the revenue is going to be there to help fund these things?
Yeah, so we are excited to say that the spending package that was indeed passed as you said, was supportive of OCDEL. We saw great increases to our pre-K counts and Head Start supplemental program, as well as a $10 million waitlist initiative and another $5 million for our early home visiting work. So we are excited that those are represented in the spend package. We are hopeful that a revenue package will be in place soon. We know that the legislature is slated to come back in early September, I believe September 11th, and we're hopeful that progress will be made on completing the budget soon.
Right. And along the lines of initiatives, and I know that we don't want to get into too much detail about it because it's still in the proposal phase, but there's going to be a initiative in terms of what we're calling early learning resource centers that will be established throughout the state. Can you at least give us a little hint of what that will entail?
Sure. The early learning resource centers are really an idea that is centered around improving family access and provider access to high-quality services. So right now, those supports are available through the CCISs that Terry mentioned around the family access side, and the regional keys are the entities that are supporting the quality side. When we think about how the early learning resources are funded and how communities can best access these types of resources, the thought was if we bring both sides of the house together and really do that blending on our end through the business partner, what we'll have is a really smooth, easy, single point of access in a community for families and for early learning providers. That procurement process is happening now. We are hopeful that we will be able to announce successful offers when the time comes, and we are very excited to look to make these changes to better support both the children and families and also the early learning providers in our communities.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, Becky, is that I guess there will be 19 regional centers and geographically set up. And, of course, where we're broadcasting from, which is the Du Bois area in Clearfield County, Clearfield will be grouped with several counties, I believe, in one region, which is part of the what would be considered northern tier. So I think it's Clearfield, Jefferson, Clarion, Elk, Cameron, McCain, Warren, and Potter counties would all encompass one region. So that just actually in the specific area where we're located in doing the show here, it's a pretty large area. We're coming up on, I guess we have probably a minute left. I kind of wanted to ask both of you guys if you kind of could summarize a little bit each, what your hopes and dreams are in this hold harmless year as we go forward.
Thank you. So my great hope for all providers is to see themselves reflected in the new Keystone Star system and see themselves being able to succeed, moving through the star levels. We really wanted to build in a lot of flexibility, move from a place where it wasn't about rigidity, it is about supporting programs in rigorous quality development, while also understanding that each program has something that makes them special, and we want to not let that get lost. We know that families want to have great choices between high-quality programs. That's the ultimate goal, is to really support everyone in meeting their quality dreams.
And just very quickly, this is Terry. My dream would be to provide the highest quality early learning opportunity to as many children as we possibly can.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, thanks, guys. The time has run up, but it was so wonderful hearing from you both. Great information that you shared with us and with families. I thank you so much for being on the program and hope to have you on again.
Okay, thank you for having us.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.